If I can't keep my head held high enough, I'll just speak love and watch the smiles come, bring my spirits up. There's some shit I like to fix, but I still know that I'm blessed.
Welcome back to my coverage of the Kristin Smart trial, heading into Monday, August 29th, week number 7, in the Salinas Courthouse in Monterey, California. And we're back in court today after another unexpected delay last Friday, where testimony with Paul's ex-girlfriend lasted all of about 15 minutes before the court was once again told they were done for the day due to an unexpected evidence delay, which I am really looking forward to this new evidence. I'm sure it's something shocking and helpful.
Monday's testimony centered on the Arroyo Grande home of Ruben Flores. Ruben is the father of Paul Flores, who's accused of killing Smart in 1996.
Shortly after 9:30 Monday morning, the contractor who built the house Ruben currently lives in started answering questions.
So today we're going to hear from the developer that built and planned Ruben's house, which was the family home when they built it at 710 White Court in Arroyo Grande. We'll also hear from one of Paul's former roommates named David. And lastly, from the neighbor. We all remember the neighbor that watched them supposedly work under cover of the night to relocate Kristin's remains after they were spooked from search warrants previously served on all 4 homes. All 4 homes being Paul, Susan, Ermelinda, and Ruben. Before court was even able to resume today, Judge O'Keefe had to meet with several jurors independently to discuss scheduling conflicts. So another late start. Testimony started at 9:30 a.m. after the morning delay, and Ed Chadwell is the name of the contractor/developer who built the house. He was first on the stand, and we all know that home was said to be Kristin's temporary grave. Ed described the steep slope of the lot. He described the construction of the foundation, which involved digging down to solid rock, sometimes 8 feet down. Purville, the prosecution, asked if Ed found any remains under the house or near the house while building the deck. He asked if there was remains of humans, primates, monkeys, or ferrets. And Ed's answer was no. He asked if any workers were seriously hurt on the job. Ed's answer was no. Ed testified that the Flores family bought the house pre-construction, and once completed, they moved in. The keys were handed over August of 1991. The lot was actually an avocado tree orchard before it was split and sold and built on. And I've noticed when I've been by there that the corner lot below Ruben's house is still not developed. And now I also get why they had so many darn avocado trees there. Under cross-examination, Robert Singer asked Ed if the 3 of them, meaning himself, his brother, and his son, built the retaining wall under the deck. Ed's answer was yes. Singer showed photos of the building plans, permits, and photos of the house as it was under construction. And Singer had Ed explain the deck construction details, modifications to the foundation, and other construction details. Singer displayed bright pink construction twine and asked if Ed used similar twine to mark the foundation back in 1991. Ed answered yes. Similar in color, since the pink shows up well. Uh-oh. I'm seeing the defense theory to explain the fibers in the coffin-size hole as described. They went over diesel fuel being used as a release agent to keep concrete from sticking to forms. Ed said it was common in the 90s, and he did use that method sometimes.
The questions are likely to explain some of the items found in the soil under the deck during a search of the home, including discoloration in the dirt and red fibers. Kristin Smart was wearing red at the time of her disappearance.
Singer is alluding to explanations why the soil had discoloration, why there were red fibers in the hole, which is consistent with what Kristin was last seen wearing. My question is, what about human blood in the bottom of the hole? It's been designated as human, they say. Sanger asked more questions about construction of the deck under the major disturbance in the soil below the deck, and described as probably where a person would dig up a hole to hide a body, remove the body, and refill the hole. Sanger showed pictures from within the last 2 years with the deck removed and asked Ed about a drainage valve and vents visible on the exterior of the house. So it's beginning to look like my guess was correct. It is time to get into the temporary grave beyond the avocado tree and connect these dots. More jury questions, my favorite. There's so many, by the way. I cover the ones I'm able. I vote yes to this technique. It should be used in all trials. It makes so much sense to me. I'm really curious. Has anyone seen so many jury questions in a previous trial? If so, let me know which one in the comments. First question from the jurors. How tall is the crawl space under the house? Ed answered, I used to be 6'2" and I had no problem standing up. Perhaps 7 feet? The height varied with slope in other areas. And the second question is, how deep did you have to dig before you hit a rock? Ed's answer was, as I recall, about 8 feet. Well, looky here. Mr. Misick is back in the saddle again today to cross-examine Ed regarding the 710 White Court address where Kristin was buried. Ruben's attorney, Harold Misick, asked Ed if the house was hooked up to septic or sewer systems. And he also wanted to know where the cleanouts were. Misick also asked, would you say 15 to 17 people were present at construction? Ed's answer was, 15 to 17 is a little much. Misick asked Ed, however many there were, if they cut their finger or cut their thumb, they're not going to come to you, right? Ed's answer was, probably not. Oh, brother, I see a long stretch they're trying to make here. Misick also complimented Ed on the house, saying he's been in it himself and it's very nice. Ed's answer was, thanks. I was going to say that, but I thought that was a little much. After that, Purville, the prosecution, did some redirect questions. And one of them was, how many people helped you build the deck area? And the answer was 2, my son and my brother. And Purville said, only 2 of them? And Ed said, no, and me. I'm still the carpenter. I don't know, that made me chuckle. So Ed was on the stand for about an hour and a half, and he was excused at 11:45 a.m.
Monday's testimony centered on the Arroyo Grande home of Ruben Flores. Ruben is the father of Paul Flores, who was accused of killing Smart in 1996. David Stone was among the witnesses who took the stand. He lived with Ruben Flores for 10 years.
In the afternoon, next to take the stand was David Stone. David rented a room from Ruben from October 2010 through 2020. After answering the Craigslist ad, he testified that his bedroom door led to the deck area. Purville, who's the prosecution, asked David if he heard about Kristin Smart while he lived there. David's answer, I'd heard her name. The prosecution then started the next question. Quote, did you ever hear Ruben Flores? And then Sanger interrupted loudly, objection! 402s! And Judge O'Keefe calls another sidebar. Man, there's been a ton of sidebars in this trial. After 2 minutes into the sidebar, all parties agreed to take lunch. Of course, you know I saved you the trouble and looked it up. 402 objection is basically irrelevant, so Sanger doesn't think that the testimony was relevant. Moving on, Judge Jennifer O'Keefe. I've noticed that the judge must be pooped, and I've been avoiding saying this because I feel for her, but she looks a bit more ragged than the start of the trial. That's to be expected, of course, but this case seems to have its fair share of challenges. Purville asked, was there a time you had plumbing issues? David admits there was a leak under the kitchen sink, and when the plumber said he needed to go under the house, Ruben said to just forget it. David testified that once he stored 2 55-gallon drums under the deck, but when Ruben found them, he was angry and made him remove them. After that, Purville asked, "Were you ever allowed to store anything else under the deck?" David's answer was, "No." Purville asked David if he ever saw anyone else besides Ruben go under the deck during the 10 years he lived there. The answer was no. Okay, I can't stand it anymore. It had to be creepy living in that house. Of course, Kristin's unknowingly hidden below the deck, but even without that, this David guy was roommates with Ruben, the father of an accused murderer, and himself now on trial for his involvement. I'm so glad the following questions were asked and answered, because as soon as I heard David say he lived there from 2010 to 2020, I wondered why he moved out. The question was, how did your tenancy end? Answer, Ruben raised the rent, and I was planning to move to Texas anyway. Question, did you leave on good terms? Answer, yes. Me and Ruben always got along. Well, that was anticlimactic. Purville asked the judge to excuse Paul's jury while Ruben's jurors remained in the courtroom. Okay, brace yourself. Are you ready for this? Question, was there any time you were walking down the hallway and heard Ruben Flores having a telephone conversation referencing Kristin Smart? Answer, it could have been Ruben or another person. Question, what did you hear him say? Answer, quote, I heard Kristin and then I heard fucking slut. That's all I heard. It could have been any Kristin. Sorry about the foul language, guys, but I use what they say in court. I'm protective of Kristin, so it really chaps my hide when they call her names like that. I get the sense that David is being protective of Ruben, and it's making me a bit suspicious. You got to wonder if the jurors are interpreting it similarly. Oh, looky here. I'm not the only one who smells a rat here. David continued with Purville, and Purville looks very confused with that answer. Purville looks down at his lectern, and then he asked David if anyone from the defense had come to speak with him in the last year or so. The answer was no. Warning, it appears like the disparaging comments and foul language continue with David's testimony. Question, did you tell Detective Cole that Ruben always called Kristin a dirty slut? Answer, I don't remember that. Purville presents a 2021 transcript of David's interview with Detective Cole. Purville goes on to ask, quote, does that refresh your memory, end quote. David answered, I don't remember that. Oh, goody, goody, goody. Purville's gonna keep digging in. Question, how close are you with Ruben Flores? Answer, I was a tenant. Question, would you rent from him again? Answer, no, he complained a lot. Purville called another sidebar. This time, after 3 minutes, all parties returned, and Judge O'Keefe asked David to step out of the courtroom. And then, this was kind of cool, Detective Clint Cole came back. And remember, he's from the SLO County Sheriff's Office. And Purville asked Detective Cole, on February 24th of 2021, did you speak with David? Cole's answer was yes. Question, was that interview audio recorded? Answer, it was. Question, did David tell you that Ruben always called Kristin a dirty slut? Answer, he did. Cole was excused at 1:54 p.m. Then David and Paul's jurors returned to the courtroom. He testified about his interview with David Stone and went into more details for the jury. Oopsie, David. It's not a good look. You need to be credible when you're in a courtroom. Okay, so after Detective Cole was done, Detective Matt Terrell was called to the stand, and he testified about serving a search warrant at Ruben's house. And he showed pictures. They were kind of cool, actually. Pictures that were found in Ruben's drawers in his bedroom. And in the drawer, there was flyers and newspaper articles and postcards and different things referring to the Kristin Smart case. And after that, Sanger was up. And Sanger wanted to point out that the Flores family received hate mail and harassment over the years, and he wanted to point out that some of the items found in the search were hate mail. I don't know how that really makes them look better, but...
Another witness Monday was San Luis Obispo County Sheriff's Detective Matthew Terrell. He testified he was part of a search on the property back in February 2020. He said some of what he found included several documents, flyers, and newspaper articles related to the case. Defense attorneys for both Paul and Ruben Flores indicated Ruben was the subject of hate mail as well as harassment over the years, pointing to some of the items found during the search.
Continuing on with the cross-examination of David by Robert Singer, he says, "You said you stored barrels under the deck. So you weren't restricted from going under the deck, were you?" Answer, "No, he got mad at me." Singer went over how one of David's friend's girlfriends turned him on to the Your Own Backyard podcast. And Singer claimed she was friends with the podcaster. But David said, "I don't know if they're friends. She talked to him and she told me about the podcast." Everybody in this area has pretty much watched that, by the way. So, of course, it's a case from our area. Singer had David admit that Kristin's billboard was up the whole time he lived in Ruben's house. And Singer asked if he read about the case, and David admitted that he looked it up online. Singer said, "You told law enforcement that the FBI never searched under the house. But you didn't know that for a fact, did you?" David's answer was, "No, I didn't." David admitted he got along with Ruben while living there, that he moved out willingly, and actually asked Ruben about moving back later, which is kind of different than what he said to the prosecution. Misik's been a busy man today. He's actually going to cross-examine David as well. Obviously, this testimony is directly linked to Ruben, so Misik's got to be on his toes. Here is an example of some of the things that he asked, and it seemed to be more just piggybacking and clarifying off of what everybody else had asked during the original questioning, to the cross-examinationing, to the recross, and now Misik. So he asked David if he and Ruben always got along, and the answer was most of the time. He asked David, "Did you move to Texas?" The answer was yes, for 4 to 5 months. Misik asked if he talked to Ruben about moving back in, and the answer was yes. But then Misik asked, "But you told the DA you would not rent from him again." And the answer was, "Not now, I wouldn't." Which I guess is legitimate. At first I thought, wow, that's not making you look very credible, but it makes sense when you hear the rest of it. Misik also wanted to know if David picked avocados off the trees, and he said, "No, I don't think so." He said Ruben would give him the avocados inside the house. And David wrapped up his testimony at 2:21 p.m. And I don't know really how effective his testimony was. It was kind of all over the place, if you ask me. Sorry, but there was a little bit of confusion regarding the order of Detective Terrell and when he testified, because Detective Cole popped in the middle of David's testimony to clarify, let's just call it confusion. So I believe David went and then Detective Terrell, best I could tell. But either way, I wanted to cover a bit more of his testimony. He said the search took about 2 hours. And when the prosecution wanted to publish those photos, both the defense attorneys went wild and objected on grounds of relevance. And here's some of the rules on relevance. Singer also alluded that the 2021 arrests were politically motivated because the DA and the sheriffs were both facing opposition. Prosecution objected that it was argumentative, which was sustained. Singer asked about press being present when Ruben was arrested and if they were there taking pictures, and Terrell answered, quote, "I don't recall when the press showed up." Misik asked if he knew that Ruben had received thousands of pieces of hate mail. The prosecution objected on lack of personal knowledge, which was overruled, and Terrell answered that he was not aware of that. And ultimately, Terrell was excused at 2:49 p.m.
Two investigators with the San Luis Obispo County Sheriff's Office testified. Detective Matt Terrell described serving a search warrant at Ruben's house. He showed pictures of items found in a drawer in Ruben's bedroom. The items, including flyers, newspaper articles, and postcards referring to the case. Monday wrapped up with a neighbor of Ruben Flores testifying about what she described as strange activity during February of 2020.
We have all heard about this neighbor. Her name is Jamelyn Holman. Hopefully I pronounced it correctly. I'm just going to refer to her as Holman. It's easier. She testified about what she described as strange activity during February of 2020. She testified she heard lots of arguing and yelling and other noises as Ruben, Susan, and her boyfriend Mike removed part of a fence and then parked a cargo trailer next to the house under cover of the night. We'll go into more detail here of her testimony. And more sparks flew, this time with Sanger again. He was mad at Purville, and have you noticed Sanger is always involved in the heated exchanges? Sanger got worked up when he wanted to review photos taken by Holman, and Purville said he already produced them. Oh my gosh, I perked right up with excitement at the word that the nosy neighbor actually took pictures that night. Oh, thank God for nosy neighbors. The prosecution was trying to introduce exhibits number 240 through 251, and Sanger got sassy when the prosecution said that they'd already provided them, and Sanger snapped back and said, quote, "Mr. Purville, you gave me 7 volumes of stuff." With this, Judge O'Keefe, look at her face here, she's not looking too thrilled. She asked the attorneys to join her in the hallway, and when they all came back, Sanger still wouldn't let up. He had several more objections to the photos. Judge O'Keefe overruled them all, and the photos were ultimately admitted into evidence. I'm so ready to see the pictures that Sanger is so scared of. The jurors must be seeing through this. Holman admitted to knowing about Your Own Backyard podcast, and that she was also aware of the FBI search on February 5th of 2020. She said the cargo trailer incident happened February 9th, 2020. She didn't report it until March of 2021. She said Susan was around more often once the podcast was released. She also admitted to going to Mr. Murphy, the Smart family's attorney, before she went to Detective Cole to be precise. She did admit that she messaged Chris Lambert about the suspicious behavior that she had witnessed. After the judge overruled Sanger's objection 352, which is duplicate prejudicial, prosecution has Holman describe a blurry photo. She says it's a picture of the garage with the red SUV pulling a trailer alongside the house. She says she lives within eyesight of Ruben, and 4 days after the search warrant in February of 2020, she documented this, quote, "unusual activity," end quote. Besides the red SUV and cargo trailer, she also observed a white travel trailer and a white van. And I know that's Mike's big old van. That dude is something else. You should have seen him make a spectacle the day of the search warrants with the local media, but I digress. I'll include that incident in Susan's episode if I ever get brave enough to do it. Ruben and Paul are most likely going to go to prison, but Susan walks among us. She's heartless in my opinion, and she really concerns me, to be honest with you. The garage was open, according to Holman, which she said was unusual. Susan was the one actually trying to back the cargo trailer into the space to the right of the garage, which leads to Ruben's backyard. And to me personally, this is more proof of who wears the pants in the family. Just my opinion. She was asked how often she'd seen Susan at Ruben's. Holman said, in the past, Susan was infrequently there, but the months leading up to the February evening, she was there most evenings. Why, I'm asking. I'm pretty sure they're not having tea parties up in there. Holman continued by saying she noticed after the sun went down that the cargo trailer and SUV had been pulled alongside the house. She said when she woke, all the vehicles were still parked there. Okay, it must have been a slumber party then, not a tea party. Just kidding. It doesn't look suspicious at all. Oh, to be a fly on the wall there that evening. Holman confirmed that the red SUV is Susan's. The white van and camper trailer were now parked on the street when she woke up in the morning. There was some cross-examination by Sanger, although he was interrupting pretty much the whole time during direct testimony. And he tried to get her to admit that she didn't like Ruben living on her street, and her answer was, quote, "I had no objection to that," end quote. Sanger doubled down and said, quote, "You would just assume Ruben lived somewhere else." The prosecution objects on relevance, and Sanger said, 780, Your Honor, which I looked that up, and it's very interesting. This is a rule on contempt or credibility, basically. So he basically is accusing her of lying, and you can see the details of 780 and all the different things that fall under credibility. I feel like she should probably have just admitted to not liking Ruben, since few around this area do. But maybe she really is fine with him. I don't know. In my opinion, it's not worth it. You want the jury to trust and believe. Oh, well, if you don't like him, her observations are what's valuable in the testimony. And she took pictures for proof. It's like a red herring she gave that to Sanger when she denied having any issues with Ruben. Kind of silly of her. Misick was back in action, and he wanted to know what time she went to bed on February 9th of 2020, and she answered that she couldn't say. And he said, "When do you usually go to bed?" And she said, "I had insomnia and a 2-year-old at the time, so she could not say." Prevel did redirect briefly, and he asked Holman if she went to bed that night, and she said yes. She was excused at 3:52 p.m., and Prevel had no further witnesses. Court will be back Tuesday morning at 10:30 a.m.
We are also continuing to keep our eye on that jury count. There are 4 of the 8 original alternates left on Paul's jury and 3 alternates on Ruben's.
Court will resume back here at the Monterey County Courthouse on Tuesday morning at 10:30.
As always, justice for Kristin.
If I can't keep my head held high enough, I'll just speak love and watch the smiles come.
Thanks for watching.
Bring my spirits up.
Don't forget to stop and smell the flowers.
There's some shit I like to fix.